We are live. Welcome to another live stream with Intelligent Construction Opportunities. I'm Stephanie Brown, founder of Intelligent Construction Opportunities. We do these live streams that provides an opportunity for construction vendors and construction professionals to share and exchange their industry experience. Today, I'm very excited having a conversation actually directly with one of our guests today, Matt Windmiller, thought to put on a live stream called Build versus Buy. So went out to our network and saw whether or not there were people interested in the topic. And sure enough, they are here live today. So we want to welcome today's guest to talk about the pros and cons of building versus buying your software and applications. Hi, everybody again. How's everybody doing?
Hey, Stephanie.
Good.
Doing well.
Good. Very good. We can all hear each other. So for the purposes of our live participants today, our viewers, we're going to sort of go around the circle here, or the rectangle as it is, and everybody can introduce themselves and share what they're all about, and maybe a little something about what it is that they believe, either build or buy side. Alec, why don't you start?
You got it. Appreciate it, Stephanie, and opportunity to join. So Alec Thompson, CEO, one of the co-founders at Riskcast. We are a labor cost, job cost tool for self-performed contractors. And my background, just quickly, was out of heavy civil. Worked at Skanska in New York, my final job there, but worked there for about 14 years. My co-founder worked there for about 20, 25. We launched the product about 8 years ago. We're a tool that's in the industry, large enterprise clients, small enterprise clients, for job costing and labor cost reporting.
Very good. Joe, you're up.
I'm Joe Datillo. I'm the co-founder of mypaintbuckets.com, which focuses on the new residential paint industry and automating that whole process in the niche there. And I'm also the CEO of Date Palm Media, which is a software development company. So I tend to end up playing in the build side of things, but my advice is not always to build, if that makes sense. So my philosophy tends to be to follow the chain of looking at buying broad, buying niche, or building, and kind of going in that order. So that if there is an existing solution, my opinion is generally that it's probably way cheaper to go that way. But we'll go into more detail on that. I love building, but I only want to build solutions that are worth building, because it's a huge investment of time and money and personnel. So you want to make sure you do it for the right reasons.
All right. So again, we're gonna pick your brains along with everybody else on all of those threads. Yana, you're up.
Hello, I'm Yana, and I'm with Smart Barrel. So Smart Barrel, we're a biometric time tracking solution that goes up on job sites. So this is actually your device, but we also have an app as well. And then everything feeds to the dashboard. So we really focus on getting the most accurate time for the field for contractors. I'm on the buy side. So I come from a background of software. So I definitely think and have had conversations with people where they had decided to go and build a system. And there definitely is a time and place for that. But I've heard all the horror stories of people putting in millions of dollars and lots of time only to come back and buy a solution afterwards. So happy to be here to discuss it and talk more about it.
Thank you, Yana. Tommy.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm Tommy Stanek, owner of multiple businesses, executive in the construction industry, more recently the co-founder of Graceful Management Systems. The GMS uses artificial intelligence to mine, analyze, and leverage historical and real-time data so that contractors can get machine-learned estimates, and also the GMS does autonomous scheduling. Never really had an intention of building a software solution, but similar to what you've heard, there wasn't software on the market that does what I was looking, so ended up going down this avenue, and I'm looking forward to chatting more about that adventure and what I've learned and what I would have done differently if I would have done something differently having taken this course.
Good, good, good. Thank you, Tommy. JD.
Yeah, JD Whitaker here, co-founder of Control Core. Our primary focus is empowering business owners in the construction industry to regain or gain financial control over their financial management piece. So not really playing so much in the project management or the field management, but our primary focus right now is creating a replacement for QuickBooks or really any of the incumbent accounting systems, and bringing together all the tools that are currently linked together through integrations. I think the other focus that's really exciting for us is the fact that knowing that construction is a service-oriented or service-focused industry, we've put together a team, and we're still building a team to just augment or to, I guess, replace the bookkeeping part of some of these. I think it's mostly, I'd say, smaller contractors. I like to joke around and say we'll be the best part-time employee you've ever hired. So that's us, kind of what we're working on, financial side, financial empowerment, and bookkeeping services. Really excited to be here. Thanks, Doug.
And that's no joke, though, because we all know that the bulk of contractors are made up of the SMB profile. So
Yeah,
that's very exciting. And last but not least, the man himself, Matthew Windmiller,
Thanks,
Mr.
Stephanie.
Obi. Yeah.
Yep, Mr. Obi. So Optimized Building Intelligence, or Obi for short, we've been at it for a better part of a year now. Early stages for us, but happy to say we're making some great headway on product development. So there's really 3 subsets of what we do, all of which is within project management. The core competencies of project management, really for trade contractors, GC, CMs as well, but much to like JD, we're focused on the SMBs within the space. So what we've done is built conversational AI for data retrieval. The beauty of building that was the hand was forced to build some really unique and special data processing pipelines for construction drawings. So the ability to talk to not just text heavy data, super structured files, RFIs, emails, what have you, but the actual construction drawings, which, as we know in the space, is fundamentally how we build the job, right? These plans are our instructions to take theory to reality. So beyond that, the second subset would be the agentic future. I think it's a bit of the next layer of buzzwords is this agentic future everyone's talking about within artificial intelligence, but along those lines, building automation tools, at the least augmenting some of the processes we know in the space all too well. Think about the submittal and RFI process as an example. Super important, but very human resource intensive, and really more or less a time suck from our day to day that distracts us from what probably matters a little bit more, which is putting work in place. So a necessary evil we want to complement with some automation. And then finally, perfect discussion for today comes at a really interesting time for us as a company, which is the buy versus build. So we also do product development, custom solutions, IP that we hand over to our customers. So that's a new subset, and really was discovered by happenstance with an education we got from some potential leads that there is a serious interest, maybe spurred on by the AI gen that we're in right now, and the fact that a lot of let's say mid to larger cap general contractors see the ability for them to build custom solutions for their work. So entertaining that as the revenue stream as well. So happy to be here and have a discussion. I think this should be great.
And also, Matt, if I can just add on, I mean, when you and I first met each other, what was so impressive to me was your background with Turner, and part of the reason that you decided to sort of cross the bridge into tech was some of your experience there. If there's any reason or any way to share that today in any of your answers, go for it, because I personally think it's a pretty impressive story you tell.
Yeah, just I could connect those dots pretty quickly. So having some great experience at the beginning of my career for a top 5 ENR contractor, great company like a Turner, and then the second part of my career working on much smaller projects, maybe at a faster rate for a real estate firm, and seeing maybe both ends of the spectrum in terms of labor, first doing predominantly union work in New York City and then a lot of open shop work. So different environment entirely. The fundamental issue was document control. And that was the thesis I left the space with. And I set out to build something that's scalable in terms of solutions to help control documents. And AI is more or less the perfect catalyst. It's the perfect time to try and execute on that inspiration. More or less, we are building, like I alluded to, for trade contractors. For me, if we're not solving, the inefficiencies within the actual built environment for the trades, then I think we're falling short on our focus, and that's why we're in that sector of the space, if you will.
Okay. And I just want to say, I don't know if somebody's got their email they're monitoring, but you can hear music when the email comes in. If anybody can turn off any external volume that they may have, I would appreciate that. I'm not sure, but I keep hearing it. Does anybody else?
I think it's just the email notifications.
Yes, yes. It's email notifications. If somebody could turn their music off, that would be helpful. All right, we're going to get underway then and dive into this. To me, it's a humongous topic. I mean, but I really want and encourage everybody to talk about it not only in terms of your experience, but also on you are more on the buy side, admittedly, but your experiences with build and why you may say what you say about that. So I'm going to start off by sort of digging into what the primary drivers are that push organizations to consider building or buying solutions. Where do you think they are in their actual journey of using software and what's already in their stack, that they may be at this fork in the road of whether or not they look off the shelf or they start looking internally to their own IT teams? So I guess I'm going to pitch it to Alec. We'll start with Alec, and then if there's anybody wants to jump in as to keep that part of this question going, would appreciate it.
Yeah, Stephanie, I am guessing everyone will echo this, that people, process, technology. And so, where are you? What do you want to do? I think you have to ask yourself the question of, what's the process I'm actually working on? And do I understand the process? Technology won't ever solve it. So I think we see a lot of people building to solve a process problem. They build tech. And so I think stepping back and asking, what's my process I'm working on? And I think it depends on the size and complexity of the company, whether or not you can then quickly find something in the market, or do you need to build something? And I think I have answers on a small company. There's good reasons for both. At a large company, there's good reasons for both. I've lived that journey in both small and large companies. But first is, what is the process we're solving? And I think a lot of us jump to tech. And in this day and age, a whole bunch of people jump to tech because it's a lot easier to do tech than it used to be. But the hardcore problem is always a process problem.
Yeah, agreed. And any other comment? We've got somebody externally, Mark Dearman, in from LinkedIn, saying seeing manual labor industries embrace software innovation is a significant step forward, no matter what your stance is on build or buy. Traditionally, these fields have stayed old school, often questioning the need for technology with a why would we need an app to hammer a nail mentality. Well, this mindset might resonate with many workers. It's exciting to see some in these industries now recognizing the value of technology, not to just replace physical tasks, but to streamline processes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on Mark, but
yeah, I can jive on that. But it's also like, to your point, Alec, the reason that I got into software from hardware was a passion for process automation, and the approach that I always take is, first, what is the process that you're actually doing it? Because if you can't do it by hand or in Excel or whatever, then I can't automate it for you. If you don't know what your process is enough to walk me through it, you can't really learn it. Now, to the Mark's point though, like someone's still got to hammer the nail in, right? That's part of the process.
Mhm.
And that doesn't go away, generally speaking. But there's all of these other pieces around communication, scheduling, project management, and payments, delivery of your service, documentation of that delivery, all those kind of things go into play. And a lot of times they're kind of like piecemeal together, or there's like one lady in the back who does all of it and nobody knows what she does. That's really common, I found. Generally, my approach in this case is to say, first of all, if I walk into your office with the CEO or the lead in the factory, and there's 100 pieces of paper printed out on the floor from Excel, and you've got your foreman and 4 other guys looking at it to try and figure out where you screwed up, you might need help. But you also have to recognize that the reason that company got to the scale that it's at, where it can even consider the significant investment in software, is because even if they don't know it, they have a process and it does work at a certain scale, or it did. And the reason that I tend to recommend looking at niche builds, if you're going to build or buy, is that those have a tendency to get you a little bit closer to your niche process. And only if your process is so unique that you genuinely look at buying and you can't find it, does it make sense for you to invest as much as it takes to make software? Because it takes a lot. That's my opinion.
That's a good segue, because what I'd like to do then, as I'm thinking how we sort of hit on this idea, so I want Matt and Yana and JD and Tommy to really quickly say, what made you recognize what you did in terms of the process? Like, where were you in this idea of, yeah, that's a process that could be automated, and this is a solution I represent as a result of that?
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna steal Joe's foundation kind of laid there. So if you don't know a process incredibly intimately, it's not worth automating, right? So until we get to the point in time in which something is rather organically innate to your everyday life for your given entity, then let's not talk about automation, right? Let's just understand that process to the fullest extent. What I mean by organically is the things that we do every single day, the core competencies, opening up a drawing set digitally nowadays and recouping some information that results in direction to the field or a modification of said direction so that we can, again, turn theory into reality. That is a process worth automating. So let's go backwards 15 years ago. We still had plan tables on every single job site, which still exists on many today, but what we did not have is a digital tool, a grounded source of truth, if you will, cloud-based drawings that are now industry standard. So that, just to recap, a solution to a set problem. I think the point that the gentleman, was it Mark that made that comment? He's absolutely right. It's a beautiful thing that mindset has shifted, right? Hammering the nail with a digital tool. Why would I ever do that? But we still need to be weary of the fact that there's a lot to say about the value that mindset brings, which is skepticism to tacking on tools that don't actually, augment the process overall. So I'd like to say that this conversation is build, buy, or do nothing at all. And that third option is something we shouldn't ignore, right? Because that's real. And I think many times we go down the rabbit hole of building something, then we talk about buying off the shelf. The end result for many of these, let's say, R&D endeavors, if you will, may actually be to do nothing. And that's actually a value add. And that value add would be that we need to look internally within our org. I don't care if we're hanging pipe or, building drawings as a design firm. Maybe we need to improve our understanding of our processes internally before we, reinvent the wheel here. So I think that would be my probably, let's say, first stack on Joe's foundation here would be to say the end game doesn't necessarily always need to be software. we need to fundamentally understand what it is we're improving upon before we make that build versus buy decision.
And where do you sit on that, Yana, considering that Smart Barrel is a combination of hardware, software?
We definitely are. So it's interesting, like I think to Joe's point, and in general, to Alex's point as well, like we definitely need to understand the process. And to Joe's point is that companies can probably stay and be successful if they keep on having the same manual process. Like they're fine. They got to where they are and they can keep on doing it that way. But really what comes down to is, what do you want to take your company to the next level? How do you want to make sure that you guys can keep on growing, but without having to hire more and more people to support that growth? And to Alex's point, I mean, it is a process. Like, look at what we do. It's a time in, time out solution. And so there's nothing, it's the same process that you currently have in terms of writing your name on a check-in, check-out sheet, piece of paper. That's what you're doing. That's what we replace. We replace clipboards. So when you're looking at it that way, it really is really understanding that process first, and then how do I find like the right technology to help solve that issue? And I think maybe what's happening and why people maybe decide to go out and build, and maybe it's on the software side's problem, is that there's so much available nowadays, and it's really hard to decipher what they do sometimes from a marketing standpoint. And I think people can get overwhelmed by seeing like, hey, there's so much solutions out there. Maybe I just, like, instead of like going through all this, maybe I should just build a solution. And but I think that in this day and age, honestly, people can probably find way more than they want out there. Like there's just so much software available for people to be successful with, and it's an exciting time, I think, now. Like it really, like I think we're taking things to the next level. And to Mark's point is that you're right, like people are really trying to take advantage of technology available nowadays, and a lot of construction companies are. And whether it's the full construction company or you have people in the construction company that are like, yeah, like let's look at solutions out there. We're going to be the project that pilots it. We're going to push this through and be innovative. And it's such an exciting time. And
it is an exciting time.
Part of it.
Yeah, it is an exciting time, but that's also why I'm finding what I do with intelligent construction opportunities is have, I'll say, the bird's eye view on what's happening, and there's tons of overlap. So to me, that's a good segue to JD and Control Core specifically coming into the market as a financial management tool, if you're going to look at it generally on, say, a marketing side. And as I often admittedly make fun of the words streamline and efficiency, those words are often thrown at all kinds of software. But when you start to recognize a workflow and really understand what that specific thing is that you're solving, again, going back to the collective agreement as we move into JD's comments, to me, uncovering bookkeeping as a service is like a big ding, ding, ding for the realities of fulfilling a specific process. You want to pick it up from there, JD?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that I'm just going to keep rolling with the point where you talked about mapping out processes or looking at workflows. And I don't know that I could really claim to be that strategic in our decision to build. It was really, so our decision really came when I mapped out all of our processes. I looked at our workflows, and because it was mostly as a result of needing to train my employees in the roles that I've been in, and trying to say, hey, if you want to create a project, you got to start it here in this particular solution, and then you're going to push it over here. But watch out for this little landmine for this integration. And after a while, I'm just thinking, man, like this is a mess. So our decision was just driven by control, and that was really where it was just like I am losing control over the quality of my data, and because I lack confidence in the integrations that were and currently are available. So we found the most, I guess, painful, we'll call them like just cross points of where one application would hand off to another application, and started to just build them and put them under the same roof and simplify them. So that was really like the impetus that got us rolling on the point of like, why would you do this? Well, it doesn't exist because nobody wants to combine card management and accounting and, like some of the other stuff that we've got coming down down the pipe. But and I'd say to your other point, also just acknowledging, actually, I really like some of the comments, Matt, just about do nothing at all. Because there's sometimes when I'm sitting in a staff meeting or a leadership meeting, and we start down this path of like, how are we going to automate this communication, or how are we going to create a stop point or stop loss or prevent miscommunication. And in all my time, I've found that the best stop, like the best safety mechanism is a weekly meeting where people just come and they get in the same room or they're on the same line and they talk about the projects. And I think you flush out more information just doing that than having a really complex like communication structure or task lists that are templated and stuff like that. I mean, those are both important, but I'm amazed how much we can just catch by just simply sticking to a meeting where we get together, we talk about the issues of the project, and you flush them out. So, and then the bookkeeping side is really, I mean, I think that it also just honors the fact that some people aren't ready to adopt the existing solutions and just being willing to jump in. Usually it's smaller folks that you can pretty much manually do a lot of the stuff that you need to. So is that echo back?
Yeah, that echoes back. I think that one of the things I happen to know about why you're doing the bookkeeping though is because it follows the process. You've got a small contractor who's trying to get the builds done literally and manage the projects literally. And when do you ever get around to that paperwork? So, and those receipts and on and on and on and on and on. So to me, that follows the need and therefore the process. I want to move to Tommy now because Tommy's got his side of it is continuous improvement. So Tommy, based on your experience of knowing people that have built themselves, what made you decide to go and figure this out? And I look at GMS as a continuous improvement vehicle. Specifically looking at scheduling, but I want to, hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I think that, the heart of the discussion really begins with something that I know has been said a few times, and it started with Matthew, and it's with regards to process, or also known as workflow. Whether you're a business owner or whether you're working within the business, the name of the game is efficiency and profitability. And the way to do that is duplication. And the only way to duplicate is if you have a process or a workflow. Otherwise, for me, I feel like you're always kind of running by the seat of your pants. And, I understand, especially in the construction industry, and I don't think that it's limited to the construction industry, that you can't proceduralize or create a workflow for everything. JD, I believe, described it as a landmine, but from what I'm trying to understand is, once we experience the landmine, I'd still like to reference back to what is it that we did historically to overcome that landmine, so that we can look at the outcome of those decisions to determine what's the best way to move forward. So I am super excited, like Yana said, that, we are on the verge of, being able to capture this data and utilize something with it. And while I agree with what you're saying, Mark, that, the industry is definitely more interested in taking a look at the technology, but I've seen a speed up back to a slowdown. And I think we're on the verge of another speed up with technology that's on the horizon, because while we have been able to take plans and get them off the table at the site and move them into the cloud, it's really only changed where you can find those plans. And that's super advantageous. But I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that if somebody doesn't take the time to upload those plans, or based on some of the technologies that are out there, finding the most current plans is almost harder than going into the basement of that building and finding the most current set of plans. And then on top of that, you add another major pain point. And I know everybody in this call has had to have heard this. I haven't spoke to a contractor that told me that they're able to navigate a customer from start to finish without using at least 6 different pieces of software. And I think that that's a major hiccup or pain point, which is causing people to scratch their heads and say, hey, maybe we should build something versus having to subscribe to this, to this, to this, to this. And when you subscribe to 6 different softwares and you've got an organization that all needs to somehow intercommunicate, you know, it does also kind of lead to what JD is saying, is getting everybody in the same room at the same time can be helpful. I personally think that a lot of those meetings can also be detrimental and a huge money suck, because if there's any perfect time to, you know, pull out a bunch of random conversation and the company has to pay for it, that's it. So it always pulls me back to the data. You know, I want to look at, you know, what's going on historically to know why are we slowing down versus what we've done in the past, learn from that, and then essentially continue to proceduralize, or as Steph, you said, continue to improve upon our existing process so that we know next time what we can do better based on the experience that we've had. That being said, you know, kind of diving back to the conversation with regards to, you know, buy or build. I, again, unless you're a major organization, would always default to buying, because if you're going to build, that's a business in and of itself. It's a major undertaking. And I also think that with what's going to be coming on the horizon, siloing your information is going to be detrimental to being able to ride the tide of what artificial intelligence is going to be able to do. You know, by plugging into some of the existing programs that are out there, you know, whether it's My Pink Buckets or whether it's biometric time tracking, they're tracking data across your industry, and they're able to use information that you don't have available to you to help optimize your operations and your business. And I didn't mean to single out, you know, that goes for everybody on this call, whether it's Riskcast or OBI or Control Core as well. There's a major advantage to plugging into the existing technologies that are available and capitalizing not just only on your information, but the information they have from some of your competition in that vertical, even in that region, to help you optimize your business.
Well, and again, here's Mark jumping in with each day, new technical solutions are emerging globally. And yes, and I even put a caveat on that. There's a lot of overlap. Well, I agree that getting started can be challenging. Entering at the ground level offers huge long-term advantages. Is it a risk? Absolutely. But taking that initial leap allows for early adaptation, learning, and refinement. This is one of the reasons that two of you on the call, we were about beta testing, positioning companies to lead rather than follow as these technologies evolve. As the industry shifts, those who start now will likely have a competitive edge, benefiting from streamlined processes, reduced costs, et cetera. But I agree with all of what Mark has said. I'm pretty sure our panel would feel the same. But what I think is missing, perhaps in this, when we start talking about process and everything, is we're giving contractors, a lot of us, the opportunity to work together, to really get into those deep, deep details. Unless you come from a strict contracting background yourself, like, I mean, in this case, I'll call out Alec and Matt and JD, where you'd understand that specific process. I think to work with people on your app really blows it out of the water and heightens the experience that'll eventually be mapped out for the larger population.
All right, let's let Alec talk because he's been waiting real patiently.
Well, I heard everybody answer. I mean, I got the opportunity to go first, and then I heard all these things, and I went, what I'm hearing, I think, is similar for everybody. We're in a consultative mode or moment with construction. Some of the folks on the call are consultants with tech. Some are tech with consulting. I know every time we sell, there's a consultation moment in those sales calls, because we're not trying to sell software. And if anybody's trying to sell software, you already have a problem. It's what's the problem you're solving, back to the process. But I hear this consultation piece of it, and I think there's some value when we talk about build buy, right? If you do identify your process, I think there's some value to build prototypes. I mean, we're in a place now where it's so technically easy to do things that maybe build some prototypes internal, like getting back to the core of the build versus buy. And I like to do nothing, Matt. Build versus buy, but maybe build a couple little prototypes. I know for us in our journey at a large enterprise, we wanted a document tool, document control. We were talking about it earlier. We built, as an organization, we used SharePoint, and we got very deliberate with it. We hired somebody to do it specifically. We hired groups of people around them. We used our IT organization, and we used our operations organization, and we built out what we called a document management tool. We did it purposely still looking for a solution on the shelf. It was a season of time for us that we needed something, we wanted something, we figured out our processes, we built our prototype, if you will, that helped us refine our processes. And after we had refined our processes, the whole time we're still looking for the product on the shelf. And eventually a product matured enough that we bought that product and sunset what we built. And that was our intention. And I think that gets into the challenges of why do you want to build versus buy, and what do you own? We can always say, oh, it's better to buy. Well, it is in the long term, probably, because there's challenges with building, but also there's seasons in time when it's very good to build, I think, these prototypes or these small microcosms of product. And I would then go to easy versus impactful. And I think something, I forget how I wrote that note down, but Yana, was when you were talking, but there's these, what are the easy things, right? Your clipboard, right? You're replacing the clipboard. This is easy. The home office might not think it's the most impactful thing right away, but it's a win that's immediate. And to Matt's point, we've suddenly digitized something. We started a journey. And so I think you should look at tools versus easy and impactful. And what you'll find is some of the easy ones become impactful and you didn't realize it. Yeah. Versus the, oh my gosh, I have to solve this biggest problem in my organization and it will take 5 years and we have this very slow mindset versus, hey, let's turn this one thing on. It's easy. And then we get big impact. So is it easy? Yeah. Is it impactful? Again, I keep throwing all the way back to what is your process you're trying to solve? What is the goal? Keep putting the goal back up on the board. The goal is replace the clipboard. But once you've done it, you can do all these other things that are exciting. Let's look at a new goal. Meanwhile, you might be tackling the impactful control core, full envelope of all the other things. They don't have to be separated or done separately. Yeah. They can be done at the same time, independently, as long as you know what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and actually, I think
you go, Joe, and then Yana will go after.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, like, Smart Barrel is probably amongst all of us, probably one of the only examples of an actually pretty broad solution. Like when I talk about broad or niche, like this covers a ton of different industries and a lot of different use cases. Now it's a low depth, which makes it even easier to implement, right? Because you are replacing a fairly narrow part of the process. Whereas like say my paint buckets, to what Tommy was talking about, the problem that everyone in the new residential paint industry was having, and the reason that I was brought into the field to figure this out, was that they needed 6 different pieces of software and they had like their little prototypes for individual functions in Excel, like what you were talking about, Alec, which I wholeheartedly agree. Like if you can limit the scope and the amount you're going to invest in creating a prototype, and you happen to have someone with technical skill that isn't going to destroy the culture of your company by integrating them, or you are not going to create a toxic environment for them, then it's a really good idea to like flesh that out. But that could even just be like a veteran who has experience making technical orders and can make a checklist, right? A prototype of your process that's written down and really can be followed that way is kind of my minimum expectation for a niche solution. And really for me and my experience in process automation, the first question is there a broad solution that like everyone's using that already does what we're talking about? Because that's going to be the cheapest, easiest to implement. Like if you're just doing the thing it already does, right? Ask that question first. Then if that's a no, then we start looking at folks like Control Core or OB or My Paint Buckets or GMS or RiskCast. These are all more niche solutions. Smart Barrel is the only one that is really a very broad solution that can hit a bunch of different industries. Each of us is targeting a fairly narrow Control core is probably less narrow. I would say you're a little bit more of a broad solution, but from what I understand, you're targeting some pretty niche markets, right?
I mean, we are
Like, I don't know a ton about you, so.
Well, I'm real quick. I mean, our focus is the construction industry.
Okay.
And while some of our technology could be applied to other industries, we've made an intentional choice to stay within the construction industry. And I think, I'll just kind of like that's.
Yeah, so you are pretty niche in that area. That way, that
we are construction.
Yana,
When you say
go ahead, Yana. Go ahead. Let's let Yana talk. We never do.
I'd say us too, just to put that out there. We only target construction companies. And Joe, I think to your point, maybe I'm selling it short because we do replace the clipboard, but we also do a whole lot of other things with regards to like cost coding and getting that accurate job costing. I'm like, let's just make it as simple as possible to put it out there. But I'm going to call you after and do a demonstration of our software to you, by the way.
Sounds good. I don't think you have to be as niche as you're trying to be. I think your solution could go a lot of places. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, fair. But focus is super important. And like construction is our bread and butter because that's people who have the most pain points when it comes down to it. Like our ruggedized time tracking solution, like it's designed to be outside in like this weatherproof environment. That's like what it's created for. But I was going to say what I find just really interesting about this conversation is that even though like we're talking about build versus buy and how a lot of us are on the buy side, a lot of us started on the build side. Like that's where really we decided to go out and we're like, there's this pain point in the industry and like there's issues that are out there and I'm sure everyone's looked for different solutions out there. Is there a solution that meets the pain points that we have? No, there isn't. Let's go out and build a solution. But I think you're making the decision that you're going to be a software company. And so I think that's what people have to make is that you're no longer a construction company. If you decide to build, you're a construction company and a software company. And so if you look at companies like Alice Dawn, who've done it really, really well, they've built their own project management solution, which is amazing, but they buy software a lot. They buy a lot of different solutions that are out there, but they've made the decision that they have like 100+ developers on staff, as well as their as well as their contracting side. So if people are open to like that and understanding that they don't want to be just a construction company, then maybe building is also an option.
Yes, but Alice Dawn is even more unique because they're obviously trying to penetrate the solutions they're building internally and selling them externally. So, there's Suffolk, there's, a few others like that have almost become an arm of their construction company, I would say. Matt, you're next up. You've been wanting to say something for a while.
Yeah, so Alex started or touched on what I would consider two levers that we have to be very wary of, which is time to value versus the impactfulness, let's say, of that outcome. So the first thing when we think about even buying software, we have to think about the financial impact on our company. What resources do we have available? Explicit money and implicit, human resources within our org to oversee this process so that the outcome is not a 0 but a 1, not a failure but a success. And then measuring the let's say the type of success, the degree of that success, we have to understand that impactfulness is going to be inversely related to that time to value. There's so many SMBs out there that don't have the ability to absorb a certain time to value, right? They're going to measure their time to value in months, maybe even weeks, certainly not years. The larger orgs are going to measure this time to value in years. So if they can go on this multi-year journey to see that value, absolutely, they're going to see in return on that investment something in terms of a power law. So to tie that into the idea that I'll build the steel man for buying versus building, and to piggyback on Yana's great point, which is everybody here that built software started as a builder, and now we're selling something that you get to buy, right? Doesn't mean that plugin is necessarily going to solve the problem set that you've defined within your org, but there's a chance it does. So I'll just quick caveat here is to say we in industry on the buy side, contractors and the like, everyone within AC need to be incredibly educated to the extent we can. There's no downside to being informed about the tools that are out there and the effectiveness of them within the space. So what that's going to do is enable you to potentially buy when the problem set is well defined enough to the point that you're looking for a solution. Now, to talk a little bit about the rabbit hole, hopefully that point is clear, that to say that you get to assume that power law, right? Because somebody built a solution, 6-7 figures of investment, multiple years, so that you now get to plug that into your organization and hopefully solve a solution. Now, I'll build the steel man right for the other side, which is to build. Maybe those solutions don't yet exist for the problem you've defined. And I say maybe, that there's a very good chance. So when we in industry, again, us as contractors, design side, whatever have you, your given org decides we're going to underwrite the potential, right? We might build a model to say, well, what's the return on investment if we look to build internally? The level of detail to which we should build, this risk analysis should be the same way we would buy out a project. I'll take the general contractor's perspective. How is it that we manage 20, 30, 50 different trade contractors on sites successfully? Well, we have some degree of expertise on every single one of those trade contractors and what they do on the day-to-day. Moving into the build of software is a totally different realm, right? We're outside our wheelhouse, but there's so much we can take from the process of which we build or manage a build development into that build experience. So think about a schedule of values the same way we divvy up scopes of work. Understanding the risk and the contingencies we apply to, let's say, a large sum, high risk effort like superstructure versus lower risk, lower sum efforts like paint, because we have somebody like Joe helping us out on that front, I'm sure, hopefully. But to that extent, we need to become subject matter experts, at least at the minimum, on the financial endeavor that we're about to go down the journey on. Once we build that, let's say, just to wrap it up, once we bring that financial exposure, there's a second part to this that's different from what it is we do on the day-to-day, which is build and turn over building spaces. You have to operate and maintain that software. So back to, I think Alex making the point on consultation, we better get educated, right? I'm saying we being the buyer on what it takes to operate and maintain said software so that we can iterate on that foundation that we built so that we can continue to extract that value. Otherwise, that time to value is actually going to diminish in terms of the extent of which you get that value for. Ultimately, the value goes to zero as other tools are built around you and competitors start to buy those tools that outperform the tool you built in-house. And that's my two guys.
Great points, Matthew. Tommy, I want to get back to you. You had something to say, and then we're going to get into either a long or a short explanation of what do we mean when we're talking about niche. So Tommy, you go for it and add what you wanted to.
So I'm going to go down a unique path, which, I think that software development is changing. And I know that everybody can agree that everything's always changing, but I think that, and I've mentioned this before, that we're on a unique horizon. And Alec had mentioned previously, Alec was able to bootstrap the business, or Matthew was talking about if you're a large enough organization and you can invest 6 to 7 years worth of money and time, you may be able to get to a particular result. But I think what it's bringing us back to is we need to understand, what is it that we're doing? Are we a construction company or are we a software company? When I first started developing the GMS, I was thinking, hey, I could do this in our office rather than subscribing to an already existing software. In that process, a couple of things came to light. And the question was, hey, are we a contractor or are we a software company? And at the time I thought, hey, we could do both. But the reality of it is that since I've stepped away and just solely started focusing on the software, I recognize the value that GMS is not able to only bring to the market, but capture from the market when we all of a sudden expanded on capturing the data, not just from the company that I was representing, but all of the companies in our region and beyond. And I read an incredible article, which is kind of echoing what I, and a little reluctant to say, because in building software, you either have to pay for it, bootstrap it yourself, or you have to raise funds. And if you're raising funds to build software, the big question that the investors have for you is, a lot of what we've kind of been talking about. Hey, is there a niche? Is there something that we don't have to rebuild the world? Is there something small that we can build bring improvement or value, and then can we attach that to something that already exists? The reality of that, and I'm going to read the title of this article. It's Todd Gang, and he titled that AI isn't a feature, it's a revolution, and why startup founders need to burn the playbook. Continuing to just become an expert in one piece of this puzzle and APIing everything is ultimately going to hinder the technology of the future, which is able to essentially capture large data sets. I heard the word, subject matter experts being thrown around. AI is going to replace subject matter experts because technology can consider so much data simultaneously, not just historically, but creating forecasts and make decisions that are beyond human capability. That if we don't have a software program that's capturing all of this information, not solely segmented, but capturing essentially this whole process, the customer's journey, it's going to be difficult to be competitive or truly experience the value that companies are trying to capture by making that 6 to 7 year investment. And I think that's something that really needs to kind of be talked about when we're tackling the topic, should we build or buy? Having worked within a contractor and having crossed that bridge and now ultimately building, if I knowing what I now know, I think that if you're going to be building software, you may want to reconsider the industry that you're in and not just look to benefit your organization, but how can your tool benefit your organization and a large variety of organizations that are navigating the same challenges. And if you don't do that, you're inevitably never going to have what somebody that's building for a large, that vertical is able to bring to the market by capitalizing on the cash and the data, as well as the feedback that's coming from all of those users. I kind of jumped all around. Hopefully that made some sense, but just kind of wanted to chime in and respond to Mark, that anonymized data, it's the name of the game, and it's going to create a vortex of users, as not just users from the subscription standpoint, because I want to just use the medical industry to pull out of this, but users in the, or let's stay in construction, contractors are the users, but the end user really ends up not only being their employees, but it ends up being their customers. And the customers that are walking away with value, they're going to start driving their contractors into utilizing the softwares that they appreciate. Amazon is an example. Amazon they don't sell a single product. They're a broker for a variety of distributors, and those distributors have to go through Amazon because the user is telling them, I'm buying from you if you're on Amazon. I'm not going to you direct because I like the user interface. And that's something that we're going to start experiencing. And Amazon is capturing all that data to make sure that the customer's journey is as seamless, efficient, and as possible. And that's something that we're going to start seeing, not just in the construction industry, but other verticals as well.
So, Tommy, I want to swing it back to stay on focus here with the build versus buy. I want to get a clean definition here for what we're talking about in describing niche. And then I'm going to bring up Chris Ricker's comment on that. So either Joe or Alec, who wants to take the niche?
Yeah. I'll take that one. So let's start with an example that's going to be understandable here, which is Procore. Broad. That is a broad solution that almost everyone is expected to use. It tries to cover a ton of things. A lot of organizations are using it effectively, but it does require a ton of training, understanding, and you usually end up with one or more people who need to be very well trained on that software. Something that is broad in the area of accounting, QuickBooks. That is a very broad thing that tries to cover every different industry. One would even say that you're kind of more of a broad solution with just focusing on construction, right? When I'm saying niche, what I'm saying is like even just saying painters is probably a broad category. Splitting, the further you make it granular, saying like only focusing on new residential painting, not even new commercial painting, that becomes very niche. And so if you can find a piece of software that's already developed for something that niche, it is most likely a really bad idea for you to try and develop another piece of software, because they're going to be dealing with almost exactly your same problems. They're going to have a small but dedicated customer basis, and you basically get access to a whole development team without having to have and be a tech company, right? To Tom's point, like, you have to become part of a tech company or split yourself into two different companies if you truly go down the path of building a solution that is like at the AAA level of like high quality. Now, you can create small solutions, and I recommend it, but they don't have to go further than that, right? You can have checklists, you can have Excel spreadsheets that just do an amazing job, and you can train up a couple people and you're good to go.
So Joe, let's get to your partner's comment. Are there truly niche software tools? Or are we failing to do our due diligence by thoroughly analyzing different types of construction, to your point, and most importantly, to identify their specific challenges? So to me, it's a combination of the specificity of the workflow. That's what it is that then becomes a digital tool. And if I dare say, partly how construction professionals relate is to the individual tool for the right job at the right time. And I think the more that you construction technology vendors build your tools specifically in the same way that they decide what's in their tool belt and what they're taking out of their tool belt, I just think the better off you are. The more general, the more overarching your kitchen sinking it, the harder it's going to be in the long run. And to Tommy's point, I do agree that artificial intelligence is much more than a feature. It's much more than a feature. And these guys that have the multi-billion-dollar bucks to keep throwing at it are going to make damn sure it's more than that. It's basically the internet, 6.0 or whatever you want to call it. It's that foundational, but that's another topic of, well, that I say that we're feeding it, we're strengthening it every day. And partly, even as I personally do it, I think, what am I doing here? Anyway, that's a rabbit hole. We're not going to stay in that rabbit hole. I want to thank Chris, and I want to thank, again, anybody who's making comments. Mark, I haven't put up everything because I don't want to conflict conversations here. But at the same time, I want to stay on target with what the purpose of today is. And so I want to sort of give some thought to how do vendor solutions offset upgrades specifically. So you've all started in the market, you've got customers. How are you going to offset those upgrade and platform enhancements, comparing them with the maintenance that might be had by somebody that's building it or has built it internally?
I'm going to jump back on the buy bandwagon real quick.
Sure.
To that point, Stephanie, to say that the upgrade cycle, if you were to build, right, is something that you will inherently miss out on unless you have incredible attention to what's happening in the core tech, the underlying foundational. Let's take AI as an example of what's happening with the models and their capabilities, their performance. You're going to miss the ability, right, to enhance the product that you built and that user experience for your own entity. So on the buy side, you have that inherent. Why do you have that inherently when you buy software? Well, those companies seek to exist and live to fight another day. They won't, I'm using hyperbole here, but they won't if they don't take advantage of the advancements in the core underlying technology. Well, go back to from Web 1 to 2, or talk about cloud enablement, or talk about this generation of artificial intelligence. So I'm going to kind of go deeper down the silo, and my conviction that building is the overwhelming best outcome. There are niche scenarios where that's not always the case, but within the within the buy argument is the idea that we can buy now earlier stage software with companies that are maneuverable and moldable to you as a customer. Why? Because you are one of a few, not one of many. So that ability for you to identify software that fits the needs of your problem set, building solutions to your problem. Focus, to Alex's point, on outcomes, not software sales. Taking your business from 0 to 1, hopefully, if not at least incrementally improving processes, workflows within your business. That's going to take your business, leaps, and you do that incrementally over time. You compound those outcomes, and that's going to take your business leaps and bounds above the competition. Further, to take the counter of building, or excuse me, I keep saying build, buying legacy software. The problem that you're going to run into, first of all, you're going to pay a lot for legacy software. Why? Because the demand is so high. It's become almost industry standard at some point. Take project management system. We know who the big players are, and they are very much industry standard. If and when you purchase that software for a very high margin, you have only leveled the playing field against your competition. You certainly have not surpassed them, because take Procore as an example, tens of thousands of customers, millions of users. They're all, if you have just entered that realm, if you purchase Procore, they are all slightly more, let's say, subject matter experts on the tools and outcomes that Procore can help you deliver. So if you want to think outside the box and take your business leaps and bounds ahead of the competition, and you're at this inflection point where you're contemplating build versus buy for a given solution for a problem set you have, take that mindset, right? How do I take this opportunity, which I'm going to invest explicitly and implicitly for an outcome in terms of a build versus buy? How do I use this opportunity to better my business versus the competition? That's my parting thought, more or less.
Well, again, I think the middle ground here is what Joe has identified from the beginning, which is the specificity. Where is the middle ground between those two ideas that follow along with the foundational? What are we trying to solve? And so there's lots of opportunities to beta test that then allows you to help to shape what's happening. But there's also the opportunity, to your point, I love what you just illustrated, Matt, and basically saying that, sure, you bought Procore, now you're on par with maybe your competitor, but what's going to keep you on top of your competition? Anybody want to comment on that particularly?
Go, Tommy.
I did. I hear what you're saying, Matthew. But I don't think that the technology is the true differentiator between what gives you the leg up against your competition. I think, again, technology, if you don't have a process or a workflow, this helps automate and streamline that type of stuff. But ultimately, the end user experience is something that technology can't do. And it's the relationship aspect of it. It's how proficient are your employees? What kind of follow-up do you have? These are the things that are going to differentiate you from your competition. Not so much the technology is my opinion. And so like that's my 2 cents on that particular topic. And then on top of that, the legacy systems are also built on an old technology. I like to compare those to a gas-fueled vehicle. There's a new technology coming out, and I know we didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence requires a significant amount of data to be able to provide optimized types of outputs. And if you're building something solely for yourself, that's the only data you have access to. And, if we're relying on technology helping us distinguish ourselves from our competition, but we're limiting ourselves to just utilizing only the data that we have access to ourselves, I think that ultimately building your own technology solution could hinder your ability to be competitive is another thing. So I hope that's helpful. Again, it's just an opinion.
No, but it's also your experience. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, Alec.
Yeah, I think I love the rabbit holes we can go down. And I know there's also hundreds of thousands of contractors out there that are SMBs, that AI it's attainable, and also it's not their immediate problem. They need to think about it. They need to have a strategy for it. But am I building or buying software today? What am I doing? Why? And not looking at the aperture this wide, but what am I trying to do? Back to process and solution. And I think we've hit on a couple of these things, which is like your architecture of your software, the maintenance and upkeep of your software. I think we didn't even talk about the security. If you build it yourself, what did you just open yourself up to? And I think, Tommy, you're right. I love to talk about the architecture of Duplo blocks versus Legos versus the fine Legos that take 100 pages, right? The old software is Duplo blocks. The newer software is Legos. The newest software is these like little fine pieces. You can do anything with them. Contractors are getting into this journey right now. What matters to them, build versus buy? And I think some of those core things we've all talked about, but it would be great to like, maybe even Stephanie, you want to wrap them up, but it's like, what are the reasons to build? What are the reasons to buy? I don't think there's one answer. I would not argue and I'd add Matt's do nothing.
Well,
I
think it comes down to money. I think it comes down to, how far along you are in the market, in terms of your own recognition and your ability to be able to hold the rein on the cost. We didn't even talk about the average cost of developing the simplest app. I think it starts with money, and then you start talking about, are you bootstrapping yourself, or are you going to go out and get VC funding? I mean, in my experience, VC funding is, you talk rabbit holes. I mean, it can be a horrible thing of, song and dance every month. You've got to keep showing that, the reason for your app's existence, or your platform's existence, keeps bringing on customers. And sometimes you're feature fixing because of it. So I want to be cognizant of people's time. I see that JD, you want to jump in and say something. I want to kind of wrap up to say that maybe we need to continue this conversation. We'll take this offline and see who's interested in doing it and what we might want to do to break it down a little further. But this is a huge topic. I think we've just barely scratched the surface. So go for it, JD.
Yeah, I can be quick. So I just think one other consideration is just the likelihood or the odds of adoption. So I had a personal experience where I was vetting out a point solution, and that was just kind of my role, is to evaluate technology and to bring it to the team and help them. I had another team member who was actually in operations. They were really the ones that were going to use the software, and he had a different solution. And long story short, I scratched everything I'd done, and I said, hey, if you feel like you guys are going to adopt this product or this solution, then I don't really care what I think. Like, I just want it to be effective. I want speed to value, and I want you guys to feel like you have the right tools. And it was one of the great decisions, like because after that, I didn't have to manage it. They got the value out of the tool. And so effectively I did my job by getting out of their way. So considering adoption and how easy something is to adopt, like for the entire team, I think is one other just really crucial consideration when considering, am I going to build it? Am I going to buy it? Will my team use it?
I think Mark's comment is a great, sort of good way to close it up. I mean, okay, but what are we trying to discuss here? Winning in the competition war or advancing our construction industries? Construction companies choosing to build their own software, he believes, is trying to make their own processes faster and more efficient. I don't think a company building houses wants to be the best in the tech space. They just want to keep their employees as the goal number one. So again, the more that we have opportunities that allows any of automation to happen, and people work together with people like yourselves to shape what those outcomes are they're looking for, that goes back to the process. What process are you trying to rectify? In this case, it could be keeping their employees as a number one goal. How does that automation literally affect that? And that's why I want to keep these conversations going. We're going to close it up, because I think, we're just after the hour mark. Yes, absolutely, Tommy. I will go around, and anybody who wants to make a last comment, I know Yana's pressed for time. So go for it, Tommy, and then we'll back it up.
Just to chime in on that particular statement, there's a little bit of a paradox there, because, if you're trying to build technology, and this is in response to Mark, if you're trying to build technology that's able to improve your processes within your organization, but because you're not a tech company, it doesn't matter that it's the best technology. How are we making sure, and again, in your particular statement, making sure that the employees are number one? How are we doing that with a subpar tech? Unfortunately, if you want to build something, you don't build a subpar house just for the sake of the fact that you can or you want to. You build a house so that it's, everything I think anybody on this call builds, they build it to the best of their ability. So I think that's just something to take into consideration, that just because you can build the tech doesn't mean you should, is what I wanted to kind of put out there.
Yeah, well, point taken. Everybody's trying to build something with quality, but again, it all comes back to the pragmatic purpose, and that's why I keep saying over and over again, it's not technology; it's their digital tools. What are you trying? What's the solution? It's one of the reasons at my early stages of getting involved with any technology, it was too many bells and whistles, or what I began to call feature fixing. Just because client A wanted X, they would take the platform and they take it back to the developers. And yeah, maybe there was a bit of a use case, and start feature fixing. And then that connected on to the VC. They were dancing to the VC. They had another meeting with the VC. Oh, look, VC, we got another client. They want X. So we feature fixed over here. It's a dance to me, whether you're doing build or you're doing buy. But I want to kind of call it here and thank everybody. I think this is a deep and wide subject, but I also think with the element of AI in it all, it's even a dark subject, dare I say. It's dark, but we have to be able to have the guts to be able to bring it to the light and remember that we have fed AI up to now. We have fed it. That's where all the scraping, that's where all the information's come from. And they continue to use us to empower their own abilities. And Joe, you want to respond to Alec, please?
Yeah. Oh, so this is the thing that Matthew said I wasn't allowed to say until the end, because otherwise I'd ruin the whole podcast. And it basically answers your question, Alec. My opinion is, if you have a defined process that does need automation and there is a solution that does exactly that, buy it. If there isn't a solution, consider whether or not you should build it, whether or not that is an actual software solution or a manual solution, like a meeting that JD likes and none of us do, or a checklist, or actually potentially going into software. But you need to define that first piece and then look to see if an exact solution for your niche exists. Absolutely. If it exists, buy it. Even if you're buying the whole small company, it's going to be cheaper than trying to build it from scratch. So that is my opinion from a lot of experience in the build versus buy. And that is the way that I would approach that solution, is first to look for something that does exactly what you want. And even if it feels expensive, it's cheap.
Okay. And Matthew wants to respond to you. Go for it.
Yeah. So to build this decision tree, right? We know the root is a solution we're trying to discover. So I think we haven't talked about this enough. We talked a lot about, the cost in terms of building, operating, maintaining software once it's built. But what is the value of what it is you're trying to extract? So we all need to underwrite. And sometimes in the consultation, we help the customer do this, right? Which is to say, let's take submittals as an example, workflow that many of us know in the industry. What is the value lost in your current process because it is X inefficient? And what is the value gained if we get back our employees' time, right? And we can actually tie explicit value to improving a specific process. And then we can weigh that against the cost to build something to specifically solve that problem. And then we're making informed decision based on calculus, versus intuition or gut. And I think tying that back to that decision tree mapping, if you will, understanding what is the value extraction of us going down this endeavor. And just the last thought is, through all these, I keep alluding to this as these moments as inflection points, we have the ability to educate ourselves, which is the best part. So when these decisions come up that need to be had, it's never a total loss, right? You're going to learn an incredible amount about your org, about the tech that exists out there, ways other companies in the space are handling these problem sets. So it's all to the benefit of your company at the end of the day.
So I want to wrap this up. Mark Dearman, he says, it's a shame I couldn't hear more from biometric time tracking. Yeah, maybe next time. So this is a great opportunity for any viewers, anybody who's listening to the recording afterward. You've heard these pragmatic construction technology vendors who, in my opinion, and it's one of the reasons I've worked with many of them, I work with them because they have the right intention. They understand that technology is to serve the purpose, to serve the outcome. It is not tech for the sake of tech. And so, Mark, absolutely. There's Yana right there for you. Big shiny face there with her lovely machine behind her. You can connect with her at Smart Barrel. She'd be more than happy to have a further conversation with you and probably show you what Smart Barrel does. And I'd like to, again, offer anybody who's listening or listens to the recording to do the same as far as Optimized Intelligence is concerned. Riskcast with Alec and Alec's team. Same for mypaintbuckets.com. That might be something that Chris Rickman is handling as opposed to Joe. You tell me, Joe. Control Core.
Reach out to either of us.
You guys are on it. And certainly last but not least, Tommy. Tommy's still looking for beta testers to bring in, and he's got lots of goodies behind the scenes to offer people that want to try on the Graceful Management System and see exactly what it can do, and more importantly, what it can specifically do for you broadly and widely. And we'll leave it here. But there's always more to come with intelligent construction opportunities. And Yana has one more thing she wants to add in.
Thank you. Honestly, it was only from the comments that have been coming through. And I think just something to Mark's point, the last thing to consider, and I think this is really important in this, like specifically in terms of what's happening now with just the labor shortage in the industry overall. If you want to attract top talent, also consider this when you're building versus buying. If they are coming to your organization and you're using some of the top software solutions that they can add to their resume, that's huge. Versus if you're just like they're going to come to your company and they're going to learn how to use your custom software, then they can't utilize that skill elsewhere. So just as like a final takeaway, like build versus buy, like there's like you can look at it from like all different areas, but like just look at it from like hiring. And I know Mark mentioned keeping your employees happy. I think that's a huge thing to think about.
It's a good
Good
one.
point. Great point. Great point. Anybody have any one last minute they want to add to? No?
That's dangerous game. I think we've
That's
done our
dangerous.
jobs.
What is a minute?
All right. So if that's
Thanks, everybody.
all right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you all.
Pleasure, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.